believe I mentioned last week that I am a big fan of narrative-driven games. Had this not been Spooky Month of spookiness, I'd probably have considered something like Firewatch or What Remains of Edith Finch. However, I want to keep this loose theme going, even if last week I completely divulged, so I could get the Juggler review out of the way before I forgot about it. By the way, like, share, subscribe, and so forth. This week, we're a bit closer to the original spirit of the month. Spirit, get it? Because Halloween. With SOMA, a game I first picked up back in 2018 because it looked interesting. As with most games I play, I didn't know what to expect, as I had exposed myself to very little marketing or trailers. I prefer to go in blind after all, as you know. I beat SOMA a day after I got it, after about 2 or 3 sessions. It's not a particularly long game, but I have to say that I really enjoyed it. Had I been doing the channel back then, I'd probably have covered it. But what is SOMA? What is it about? SOMA follows Simon Jarrett. He's a dude who works in a bookstore in Toronto called the Grimoire. It's not relevant, I just like the name, Grimoire, it's a fun name. And who had, before the game takes place, suffered a significant brain injury, which has left him with months to live. He goes to see a brain scan doctor who is offering to try and help, but as the scan commences, you're transported to a dark and dingy environment without any explanation or warning. Simon finds himself in Phantus 2, an underwater research facility, and must team up with the only other sane survivor. It's established from here that some sort of disaster has taken place on the surface. We don't really learn exactly what it is until after we meet Catherine, who is the sane survivor we're teaming up with, and the goal then becomes about saving the last of humanity. This is a game I like and respect too much, so I won't spoil it for you, but I will say that it manages to pull off both a happy ending and a sad ending at the same time. I suppose you might call that bittersweet. Though I feel it doesn't quite fit here because there is a happy ending and a sad ending that work basically alongside each other, both taking place at sort of the same time, running side by side, so I don't know if that word really works here. SOMA is brought to us by Frictional Games, creators of Amnesia: A Dark Descent. Wait, is it A Dark Descent or The Dark Descent? I don't remember, I'll look it up later. That's not a joke, there's not a memory loss joke in that Amnesia thing there, that's just me genuinely forgetting to do my research. Whether it's one or the other, it seems to be a game that a lot of people are really fond of. I played it for about an hour maybe, and I just couldn't get into it. Didn't think it was bad, just, well, I think I got too anxious to keep playing. So, you know, maybe the horror game did the horror correctly. SOMA already shows elements of Amnesia. It's a first-person psychological horror game where you've got no means of fighting back against the monsters that appear. The game also tries to discourage you from looking directly at the monsters. Your only defense against them is to hide and just pray they didn't spot you beforehand. The game is very much a story-driven experience, and one I found to be very engaging. I quite like the character of Simon Jarrett. He's just this clueless bloke tossed into a situation that he can barely comprehend. As we learn what Simon is in the game and listen to the standard issue audio diaries and logs, we learn about the world of the game and how all the pieces fall into place. Again, I won't spoil everything. I know not everyone likes listening to the random audio diaries and stuff that appear in games, but I do. I find it really engaging for whatever weird reason, I don't really know, I just like it. I love combing through terminals for details and listening to the last thoughts of the staff that worked in Phantus 2, most of whom are dead or are better off dead when you find them. Not far into the game, we meet Amy, a woman whose voice we've heard over some diaries and through some information buffers, which is a complicated thing which kind of ties into the overall plot that I don't really want to spoil, so let's just say you can occasionally touch a thing and recall the last events of what happened there through the listening. That's a sentence, why not? Anyway, back to Amy. She's hurt and connected to these weird cable things. One of them looks like a pair of lungs, and they seem to be keeping her alive. But not in a pleasant way, it's in a particularly horrific looking way, and she's clearly suffering. And the only way forward in the game is to unplug her from the nearby terminal and let her die, and I kind of felt bad after that. That didn't make me feel good, even though it was basically a mercy killing. We also meet a dude who's trapped in the body of a robot who didn't even seem to realise that he was. He's hurt and confused, abrasive, but understandably so. Either you shut down the power and have to sneak around a monster, or you run the power through him, making him suffer even more so you can escape without risk to yourself, and obviously if I'm in a hurry, I'm gonna do the quick one, but I'll feel shit about it. The game almost has a moral choice aspect. It does not actually affect the game long term, so you don't feel a need to commit to being the good guy or bad guy. You just make whatever choice you make, and well, if you're me, you probably feel a little bit shit about it either way, and I feel like I love this game because of that. Few games I've played know how to get me feeling like crap for the things that I've done. And I love the backstory and writing, real effort went into these in SOMA. You might think it's weird that I like being made to feel like crap by the game, but I think if it's done right, it's a good thing, you know. I feel like SOMA does it right, is the point. You'll notice that I've yet to bring up the horror elements of this self-proclaimed horror title. I did mention a monster briefly earlier, but I haven't really got into that bit. And that's because, well, the thing is, the game is really atmospheric and creepy, don't get me wrong. I think it's brilliant, it looks nice, it sounds great, it all kind of just falls apart when the monsters happen though. You see, alongside the Simon/Catherine plot, there's a plot about the WoW, which is a weird organic thing that infects the base and has turned people and machines into monsters. On its own, that's not a bad plot, but I don't really find that it works with Simon's plot. It doesn't mesh together properly, rather it just appears to interrupt it because now your task is delayed by having to sneak around a monster. This whole subplot only seems to exist to have the spooky, chasey, stealthy gameplay, and while that's a fine thing to have in theory, I don't think it was executed well at all this time around. Again, I'm not against these sort of elements in a game, I don't mind them at all, but it just, as I said earlier, it doesn't really gel together properly. That's not to say I don't find the monsters creepy, it's not like Horror Tales The Wine where the monsters are just blokes in Halloween costumes. In SOMA, the enemies have this weird biomechanical look, and they do blend well into the environment. They've got this sort of weird deep-sea creature mixed with machine thing that I think is a pretty cool design. Even the first clunky monster we see, I actually kind of like the look of the fella. He's almost cute in a fucked up sort of way. But as much as I like how they appear, I find them to be most effective when we don't actually see them, when they're just off making creepy noises as we crawl around the dark, or if we just occasionally catch a glimpse of these things as we're walking around. Perhaps they're off in the distance or down a corridor or something. I think that makes a nice addition to the game. I think it's more effective than actually getting a look at these creatures, because when we get a look at them, well, we get a look at them, that's all mystery removed. Really, all we're left with is just the whole sneak around, don't look at them, and you're done situation. That's another thing I should mention, you're not supposed to look at the monsters. If you do, your screen starts going all blurry and weird, which again ties into the plot, but it's one of those annoying design choices because I need to figure out where the fuck the monster is. Why are you punishing me for looking at it? I suppose that's to reward the monster some mystique, but I don't think it really works properly, it's just annoying. I'd rather be able to see them so I can figure out where the fuck I'm going, or maybe just not have the monsters at all. It's not exactly exciting. I've mentioned before that I'm an anxious individual by default, so it was a little effective, but I get the same feelings of discomfort when I have to leave the house, so it's hardly an achievement on the game's part. If my brain worked properly, I'd probably not have been bothered by it at all. I don't really think that anything would have been lost if we just didn't have this WoW subplot. That's WoW, W-A-U, by the way. It's not WoW as in oh wow. And I think the worst part about this subplot is it gets resolved really anticlimactically. It almost feels like the writers just sort of got bored of it and wanted to get rid of it, but didn't want it to just disappear from the game without context, so they made a bloke appear in the game. He guides you to a place, you stick your hand in a thing, and then that's basically the end of it. I mean, you've then got to escape a giant squid monster, but after that point, you've got really nothing to worry about. The monsters seem to just completely fuck off from the plot, which is fine, I just kind of wish they did that earlier or didn't show up at all. Then we get to conclude Simon and Catherine's story, which is infinitely stronger than the WoW story, and we get that ending that I mentioned earlier that, again, I'm not going to spoil. It's a good ending, well delivered in my opinion. And it's one that really sticks with me. This game that cost me I think only a tenner when I picked it up, has stuck with me more than most $60 titles. The main reason being that this game was the product of a talented artist with a story to tell. Yeah, it's not perfect, again, the monster bit really wasn't a selling point to me, but I love the game nonetheless, I can forgive this shortcoming. When I booted it back up again to play so I could get some footage for this video, I was actually giddy with excitement. I also noticed that they added something new, or at least something that wasn't there the last time I played, something called Safe Mode. In this mode, the monsters can't kill you, they just stand around looking creepy, so you don't have to waste as much time sneaking around. I gave it a try, it did make me feel more confident because I was never under threat, but if I'm being honest, I think I'd just rather lose the monsters altogether because they really just don't seem to work. Basically what I did was just knock the game down to easy mode, and you know what, I don't think anything was lost doing this. I still found the game to be atmospheric and creepy, so, you know, I just didn't have to worry about dying every 5 minutes, which I felt kept the game's pace up.
Okay, Phantus,
says SOMA, annoyed.
Would you rather a game where you just wander around and pick things up with no threat?
Well, yes, actually. I've mentioned What Remains of Edith Finch and Firewatch before, and now I will again. Both games are largely about just walking back and forth and picking up stuff. But they've got confidence in the story they're telling, and both have respectable atmospheres. Neither felt the need to randomly put monsters in for monsters' own sake. Okay, Edith Finch did a little bit, but it actually worked with what was going on. And after you're done with that little chapter, they kindly fuck off. Both of those games are, in short, incredible, and I think SOMA probably would have done better if it aspired to be more like them. Yeah, it would have just made SOMA a walking simulator, but so what? That isn't a bad thing. I know some people don't care for them, but I have a lot of respect for the walking simulator genre. SOMA would have done just fine, I feel, probably better without the monster element, but I guess you couldn't get people making reaction videos of it if it hadn't had the monsters in it. Do people still do those things, you know, the reaction videos? I never got into those, but I know that they were a big thing for a while. I think around the time Five Nights at Freddy's was coming out, everyone used to love pointing cameras at their faces and pretending to scream. Maybe people still do. I don't know, and I don't care enough to look it up. The bottom line is that SOMA's inclusion of monsters, for me, does nothing but hamper the experience rather than add to it. The game itself is still fantastic, and I'm going to stop talking about the monsters now because it's boring. I love the existential elements of the narrative and how Simon is coming to terms with the crazy shit that occurs around him. I like his relationship with Catherine as well. It develops well over the course of the game, and I was really rooting for them. I wanted this duo to get out of this unharmed. Do I recommend SOMA? Sure I do, it's a good game and you might even enjoy the monster subplot, and if you do, more power to you. That's supposed to be monster subplot, not monster subplot, but I'm not re-recording that. It was one of the better games of the PS4/Xbox One generation in my opinion. If I did a list of my top 10 favourite games from 2015, being the year it was released, I'd probably have put it quite high up there. Though that's only because I cannot remember any other 2015 releases. Hold on, I'm gonna Google. Fallout 4 and Bloodborne, they were both released in 2015. I guess they probably have been on the list as well. Despite the hours that I put into both of them, I still look at SOMA as one of my preferred titles. Hours aren't everything, you know. A good story is, well, good. Not that I'm saying Fallout 4 or Bloodborne had a bad story. I just preferred SOMA's. It's not overly long, but it does what it needs to do in the time it has, which is, to me, it's always better than a 100-hour game that goes nowhere. So my closing statement is that if you like games with a strong narrative focus and a great atmosphere, then SOMA is definitely worth looking at. Thanks for watching, be sure to check out the other content available on the channel, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. You can also support the channel on Patreon from as little as £1 a month. Check out the link in the description. Thanks in advance and we'll see you next time.